Hey guys, welcome back to Eversoul. In today's video, I want to talk about faction summons and which faction I am summoning for personally and give you guys my logic behind it and the priorities I would have at the moment. Just keep in mind, if you are watching this in the future, new heroes will come out, which can change the priorities. Also, the meta evolves from the early game, like the first 6 chapters, to where we are now seeing people in chapter 14 through 16. The meta shifts very quickly in these games, and endgame meta could be completely different. So the number one thing to do is summon for who you like and what you have fun with, because that is what a game is about. But I'm going to go through my decisions and talk about it so you guys can know where I'm coming from. Now, TLDR, my personal priority in order would be I just feel like Fairy is number 1 for me at the moment, and I'll explain it in a minute. Number 2 is Human and Undead, very close together. But at the moment, I'd say almost Human nudging Undead out just based on what we're seeing for usage. And then after that is going to be the Beast faction. So let's jump into it and take a look and show you guys basically what I'm looking at when I make that decision. You guys, once again, can make your own decision. Things can change. I'm just basing off what I'm seeing from clearing results in the game at the moment. So the reason Fairy is my number 1 is because we have so many useful units in the Fairy faction. So we have Talia, who's an absolutely amazing unit in just about any composition. We have Vivian, who's absolutely top tier for the first 10 chapters. She sort of gets outclassed a little bit by Naya moving forward. Also, Vivian's about to get a nerf where her ultimate won't be full AoE. It's going to be arranged. So that's going to knock her down a bit. But I just think Vivian in the end game, when you've got that haste buff, she's always going to be viable. Keeping in mind, we're going to go into multiple teams later on, and she is just amazing. Then we have Chloe, who is absolutely clutch for a lot of teams. So when we just look at those ones, we've got 4 units that are very, very powerful units that are great to pull. We then have Renee, who I haven't had much experience with. I do like her kit. I haven't seen too much on her, so I need to do some testing on her myself. Nicole, who I think is going to be an absolute savage in bosses because she increases the crit damage that allies deal. And then we've got, and she does decent damage herself. And then we've got Miriam, who I'm really unsure about. But just basically due to these Talia, Vivian, Chloe, and Naya being so incredibly strong with where we are in the game at the moment, that is why I prioritize the Fairy faction. Now, as we move past Fairies, like I said, I'd go into Human next based on what I'm seeing. Basically, what I'm seeing from a lot of players from chapter 14 through 16 is they're using Claire. Claire's becomes like a substitute Adrienne. So if you had a copy of Adrienne in the early chapters, you probably don't have her at higher ascension anymore, and Claire takes over that slot. They're then using a lot of Catherine. Catherine is always going to be amazing in this game as you push higher deficits. The invincibility that she brings is just so clutch in so many situations. And you know, invincibility is just, it's really good in these games, especially when you're pushing higher and higher, when you start getting higher damage. And then the other one that I'm seeing a lot in replays is Mephistopheles. I can't say her name, but Meph is getting in there a lot. The reason being is, well, firstly, it's a lot of whales up there, and they've got her maxed out from the banner. So that is a contributing factor, meaning she's going to do better. But on top of that, she does have some really nice control effects. She locks out the enemy with the highest attack, which is really strong for survival. But then she also has this passive that increases the chance of enemies to take crits. And then when you get her artifact, this also reduces the defense of enemies. So when we go into these, like I said, 14 through 16 chapters, there's a lot of players. You're pretty much running very tanky teams to try and survive, but then you also need to bring damage. So what she does is she helps with the survival, and then she also increases the damage based on this, making you land more crits and also reducing the enemy's defense. And that is the basic reason why I think she's being used. On top of that, obviously, a lot of these whales do have her at 5 stars, so Origin 5 star, which definitely does help. But I still think she's a decent unit just as a supportive, not to have max ascended and stuff like that. So she's a decent one to pull for as well. And like I said, we have Catherine. Now, as we move past those ones, Dora apparently starts to fall off once we move into those later chapters, but I think she's still going to be a beast for PvP and stuff like that. Cherry, I'm not too sure about. We'll have to see maybe in some debuff teams and stuff like that. She can deal some nice burst damage. And then we have Jade. Jade is fantastic. Her ult is really good. She's not really seeing much play from what I've seen at all at the moment, but I think in PvP, she's going to be very clutch. Also, she has a really nice effect, which is really good for locking out enemies, which is a charm, which is really solid. Now, her charm does get outclassed by the demon chick in the future, but she also has this effect. So in some teams, I think PvP is where she's going to shine, whereas I don't see her, from what I've spoken to people, Jade doesn't really bring as much to the campaign as what Meph does. Basically, Meph has the same effect of locking an enemy out, but she also brings all those offensive buffs as well. So she's sort of the better option from what I'm seeing, from what I've heard from players in that sense. But Jade is still a really solid unit. And Lindsay, I think, will have more use in the future. But that's basically the reason. Claire, Catherine, and Meph, 3 key units that are being used at the moment that are handy to get dupes for, especially that Claire. If she's going to be in the front row taking damage, you want to get the dupes to get her tanky. But like I said, still I'm looking at fairies as my number 1 option. Then we move on into the undead. Now the undead's a very interesting one. I think undead might reach more priority later on. We'll have to wait and see. But basically you've got Petra, who's absolutely amazing. Just solid tank. Like I said, she's not really getting used because most players that I see pushing the limits are using human and fairies. But Petra, like I'm at chapter 10 now, and she's just an absolute beast. She's always going to be good. She deals damage based on the enemy's max HP, and she's just got so much self-survivability, plus she shields the team. She's always going to be solid. Jacqueline is an amazing assassin, probably the best assassin in the game. She can actually cheese out some units with her stun at the start of the game and stop them from using certain effects, so she's fantastic as well. Prim is actually a very underrated healer in my opinion. I think she really should be, when we did the tier list, I can't remember where she was. I think she should be borderline S tier. She's a really good healer, but also brings offensive buffs as well. And those are the main ones. Rebecca is clutch in certain situations, and I think Nini is going to be good later on. But that's sort of where we're at. So basically the main 3 you're looking for here is Prim, Jacqueline, and Petra, but because they're not in the current meta that we're seeing, that's why I put humans and fairies above them. And then finally we have beasts. Now beasts, what I'd be really looking for is Ira just drops off a heap. I have high hopes for her in PvP, but she's like a god tier carry in the first 5 chapters, which only lasts about a day, and then she really does fall off. But Siha and Mika, amazing combo. Clara is actually really good. I'm liking Clara more and more every time I use her. She's actually a really solid unit. So those 3 are the key ones there, but like I said, they're not seeing much meta usage from what I've seen. But I think in PvP, Siha Mika combo, once Mika unlocks all her stuns, when you pair them with something like a Naya for the chain CC capabilities that we have there, and then there's a few other units you can sub in, throw in a Jade to increase the RNG. I feel like those 2 are going to be very, very strong in PvP as well, as being just solid units for campaign and stuff like that, but not in the top meta. Haru is another one that I think is going to be amazing in PvP. She's doing some really high damage PvP stuff at the moment, but that's basically because these guys aren't seeing much meta use. That's why they are my lowest priority. So that's just some things to look at. But like I said, for me personally, it is fairies as number 1, humans as number 2, and undead as number 3. But like I said, can easily change if the meta shifts, if new heroes come out that make a faction better. If we look at something like AFK Arena, for the first 6 months of the game, 6 months to a year, their human faction, the Lightbearers, were number 1 for everything, and then for about the next 2.5 years, they were the lowest priority. So these games do shift very, very quickly. So if you're watching this in the future, do take note, but that is what I'm looking at the moment. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.